They thought I just stamped papers. I was signing verdicts.
The first thing you need to know about betrayal is that it tastes like expensive wine and sounds like laughter that doesn't include you. I learned this on a Tuesday night in October, sitting at Romano's rooftop restaurant, watching my wife Vivian flirt with her boss while I picked up the check. My name is Elliot Harlow, and I'm what you might call an invisible man. Not literally, of course, but in the way that matters most in a marriage. I'm the guy who pays the bills, fixes the leaky faucets, and gets introduced at dinner parties as, "Oh, this is just my husband." What Vivian doesn't know, what nobody knows except my closest colleagues, is that I'm a senior inspector for the Portland City Licensing Commission. In this town, I'm the guy who decides whether your business opens its doors or gets buried in red tape. But that night, I was just the schmuck footing the bill for my wife's affair. Eli, you remember Andrew Fraser, don't you? Vivian's voice had that fake brightness she used when she was lying. My boss at Technova Solutions? Andrew Fraser. Mid-40s, perfectly styled hair. The kind of smile that belonged in a toothpaste commercial. He barely glanced at me as he shook my hand, his attention already drifting back to Vivian like she was the only person at the table. "Right, the husband," he said, not bothering to hide his disinterest. "Vivian's told me so much about you." The way he said it made it clear she hadn't told him anything good. Monica Chen, Vivian's best friend and Technova's HR director, giggled into her martini. "Oh, Andrew, you're terrible." I forced a smile and reached for my beer. "All good things, I hope." "Of course," Vivian said quickly, but her eyes were on Andrew, not me. "Eli works for the city, very stable." Stable. Like a piece of furniture, like something you take for granted until it breaks. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. They talked about Technova's expansion plans, about the new contracts Andrew was pursuing, about the company retreat to the Bahamas that Vivian was so excited to help organize. I nursed my beer and watched my wife's face light up every time Andrew spoke. I needed air. "Excuse me," I said, standing up. "Just going to step outside for a minute." Nobody seemed to notice I'd left. The restaurant's patio overlooked downtown Portland, the city lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. I pulled out my phone, checking emails from work, when Andrew's voice drifted through the glass doors behind me. "What do you mean? Who is he?" Andrew sounded panicked. He's Vivian's husband, some city worker." I turned slightly, pretending to admire the view while straining to listen. "Jesus Christ, are you serious?" Andrew's voice dropped to a whisper, but the autumn air carried it perfectly. "He's the senior inspector? The guy who can shut down half the businesses in this city?" My whole body went cold. No, this changes everything. "Does he know about us? Oh God, what if he knows?" I stood frozen, pieces clicking into place like a puzzle I'd been too stupid to solve. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started humming in the shower, songs she used to sing for me, now clearly meant for someone else. When I walked back inside, Andrew looked like he'd seen a ghost. His face was pale, and his hands shook slightly as he reached for his wine glass. Vivian was leaning toward him, concern written across her features. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling back into my chair. "Fine," Andrew said too quickly. "Just work stuff." But his eyes kept darting to me like I was a bomb that might explode at any moment. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and barely concealed tension. When the check came, Andrew made a show of reaching for his wallet, but I waved him off. "My treat," I said, pulling out my credit card. "After all, we're practically family now, aren't we?" The drive home was silent, except for the radio playing soft jazz. Vivian stared out the passenger window, her phone buzzing constantly with text messages she thought I couldn't see. "Good dinner," I said as we pulled into our driveway. She murmured, already unbuckling her seatbelt. "I'm exhausted. Think I'll take a shower and go to bed." Our house was a 1920s colonial that we'd bought 3 years ago, back when we still talked about having kids and growing old together. Now it felt like a museum of better times, filled with wedding photos and vacation souvenirs from trips when we actually enjoyed each other's company. I sat in my home office, listening to the water run upstairs, and opened my laptop. A quick search confirmed what I already suspected. Technova Solutions had applied for multiple city licenses over the past 6 months. Business permits, zoning variances, health department certifications, all of which had to cross my desk for final approval. Andrew Fraser had been sleeping with my wife while his company's future hung in the balance of my signature. The shower stopped. I heard Vivian moving around upstairs, her phone chiming with more messages. When she finally came down in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and her purse. "Looking for something?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Your phone kept buzzing," I said. "Thought it might be important." She snatched the purse away, but not before I saw the second phone tucked inside, a sleek iPhone that definitely wasn't the Android she'd been using for years. "Just work stuff," she said, echoing Andrew's earlier lie. "Must be pretty urgent work stuff to need a second phone." Her face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Right," I stood up, rinsing my coffee mug in the sink. "Well, I'm beat. Long day tomorrow." I kissed her forehead, a habit so ingrained I did it without thinking, and headed upstairs. She stood in the kitchen, clutching her purse like it contained state secrets. Which, in a way, it did. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathe beside me, planning my next move. While she slept, I carefully extracted the second phone from her purse and installed a tracking app I'd learned about from our IT department. It took less than 5 minutes to clone her text messages to my own device. By morning, I had everything I needed. The message thread between Vivian and Andrew read like a bad romance novel, full of hearts and kisses and promises to figure something out about her boring husband. They'd been meeting at the Eastland Park Hotel every Thursday for the past 2 months, charging the rooms to Technova's corporate account. But it was the most recent exchange that made my blood boil. "Andrew, your husband can't find out about us. Not until the licenses go through." "Vivian, he won't. Eli's completely clueless. He barely notices I exist anymore." "Andrew, good. Once we get approval for the expansion, we can figure out how to handle him." "Vivian, can't wait for the Bahamas. Just you and me and no boring small talk about city ordinances." "Andrew, soon, baby, very soon." I screenshot everything and forwarded it to a secure email account, then deleted the evidence from her phone. When Vivian woke up, I was already dressed for work, adjusting my tie in the bathroom mirror. "You're up early," she said, stretching like a cat. "Big day ahead," I replied. "Lots of licenses to review." She didn't catch the emphasis, but she would soon enough. I kissed her goodbye, another habit I'd break soon, and headed to my car. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw her watching from the bedroom window, probably already reaching for her secret phone. Let her call Andrew. Let them both panic. The game was just beginning, and they had no idea who they were playing against. The Portland City Licensing Commission occupied a gray stone building that most people drove past without a second glance. From the outside, it looked like any other government office. Boring, bureaucratic, forgettable. But inside those walls, I wielded more power than most people realized. My office was on the 3rd floor overlooking Congress Street. The nameplate on my door read Elliot Harlow, Senior Inspector, but it might as well have said Gatekeeper to Your Dreams. Every restaurant, every retail store, every tech startup in Portland needed my approval to operate. I was the guy who decided whether your business license got rubber stamped or buried under an avalanche of compliance requirements. "Morning, Eli," said Benny Rodriguez, my field investigator and the closest thing I had to a best friend. Benny was 6'4", built like a linebacker, and had the kind of face that made business owners nervous. He'd been a professional wrestler before joining the commission, and he still moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. "Morning, Ben. How'd you sleep?" "Like a baby. You, on the other hand, look like heck. What's eating you?" I handed him a cup of coffee and closed my office door. "I need a favor, strictly off the books." Benny's eyebrows shot up. In 5 years of working together, I'd never asked him for anything that wasn't completely above board. "What kind of favor?" "The surveillance kind. I think my wife is having an affair." He whistled low. "Vivian? Wow, Eli. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry yet. Be thorough." I gave him Andrew's address and Technova's office location along with photos I'd pulled from the company website. "I want to know where they go, when they meet, how often they're together, everything." "You sure about this? Once you know for certain, you can't unknow it." "I'm already certain. Now I need proof." Benny nodded and pocketed the information. "What about the guy's business? Technova, right? Didn't they just apply for a bunch of permits?" "They did indeed." I pulled Andrew's file from my desk drawer, 6 inches thick and growing. "Seems Mr. Fraser's company has been very ambitious lately. Restaurant licenses for their corporate cafeteria, zoning variances for their new headquarters, health department certifications for their on-site gym, all pending my review. And now you're reviewing with special attention to detail, the most thorough review in commission history. The first stop was O'Malley's Pub, a dive bar 3 blocks from City Hall where the real business of Portland got conducted over whiskey and beer. Ruth Morrison, the bartender, had been serving drinks and collecting secrets for 20 years. She knew more about the city's power players than the mayor's chief of staff. Well, well, Ruth said as I slid onto a bar stool. Eli Harlow drinking before noon. This must be serious. Just a Coke, Ruth, and maybe some information. She poured my drink and leaned against the bar, her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. What kind of information? The kind about my wife. Ruth's expression softened. Oh, honey, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. My stomach dropped. So you know. I know Monica Chen can't keep her mouth shut after 3 Cosmos. She was in here last week bragging about how Vivian was living her best life with some rich tech guy. Said they'd been meeting at fancy hotels, planning some romantic getaway. What else did she say? That your wife thinks you're too boring to notice. That she's got you wrapped around her finger. Ruth's eyes flashed with anger. Made me want to smack her across the face. Did she mention anything about my work? About the licenses? Ruth thought for a moment. Actually, yeah. She said something about how perfect the timing was, how Vivian's boyfriend needed some city approvals, and wasn't it lucky that you were too clueless to connect the dots? I finished my Coke and left a $10 tip. Thanks, Ruth. You're a good friend. Eli, whatever you're planning, make sure it's legal. You're too good a man to throw your life away over a cheating wife. Don't worry, everything I'm planning is perfectly legal. Back at the office, I spread Andrew's permit applications across my desk like a general studying a battlefield. Each form was a potential tool, every requirement a chance to make his life difficult. Technova wanted to convert an old warehouse into their new headquarters. The application looked straightforward, but I knew better. I pulled out my red pen and started making notes. Environmental impact study required for buildings constructed before 1950. Traffic flow analysis needed for businesses expecting more than 200 daily visitors. Historical preservation review required for structures in the Arts District. Fire safety inspection needed for any building with more than 10,000 square feet of office space. Each requirement would add weeks to the approval process and thousands of dollars in consulting fees. Perfectly legal, completely justified, and absolutely devastating to their timeline. My phone buzzed with a text from Benny. In position. Subjects just entered Eastland Park Hotel, room 412. I checked the time. 1:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Just like clockwork. 20 minutes later, another text. Got photos. They're not discussing quarterly reports. By 3 p.m., I had a complete dossier. Benny had photographed them entering the hotel separately, leaving together, and sharing what was clearly not a business lunch at a romantic restaurant on Exchange Street. The images were crystal clear. Vivian laughing at something Andrew whispered in her ear, Andrew's hand on her thigh under the table, a kiss in the hotel parking lot that lasted long enough for Benny to take a dozen photos. But the most interesting photo was Andrew's face when he spotted Benny in the hotel lobby. Even from across the room, you could see the panic in his eyes. He'd grabbed Vivian's arm and hustled her toward the elevator like they were fleeing a crime scene. He made me, Benny explained when he returned to the office. Recognized me from somewhere. Guy looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Good, let him sweat. That evening, I got home before Vivian for the first time in months. I was sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper, when she walked in at 6:30. You're home early, she said, dropping her purse by the door. Slow day at the office. How was your afternoon? Fine, just meetings. She avoided my eyes, heading straight for the kitchen. I need to shower, long day. I bet. How's Andrew doing? She froze in the doorway. What do you mean? Just wondering how your boss is handling all the stress. Running a growing company can't be easy. He's fine. Why would you ask about Andrew specifically? I shrugged, turning a page of the newspaper. No reason. Just making conversation. She disappeared upstairs, and I heard the shower running again. While she was occupied, I checked the tracking app on my phone. Her route that afternoon told the whole story. Straight from Technova's office to the Eastland Park Hotel, then to the restaurant on Exchange Street, then back to the hotel, and finally home. 2 hours and 15 minutes of adultery documented to the minute. When she came downstairs in her robe, I was cooking dinner, her favorite pasta dish with the expensive wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. "What's all this?" she asked, suspicious. "Can a man cook dinner for his wife?" She relaxed slightly, settling onto a bar stool at the kitchen island. "It smells wonderful." "I thought we should talk," I said, stirring the sauce. "About us, about our future." "What about it?" "Well, you seem happier lately, more energetic. I was wondering if there was something new in your life." Her phone buzzed on the counter. Andrew's name flashed on the screen for just a moment before she flipped it face down. "Nothing new," she said. "Just enjoying work more, I guess." "That's great. Andrew seems like a good boss." Another buzz, another quick flip. "He is. Very supportive." "I'm sure he is." I plated the pasta and poured the wine. To supportive relationships. We clinked glasses, and I watched her face carefully. She was nervous, distracted, and checking her phone every few minutes. Whatever Andrew was texting her, it was making her increasingly anxious. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, just work stuff." "Seems urgent." "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. After dinner, she excused herself to return some calls, disappearing into her home office with both phones. I cleaned the dishes and tried to look like a devoted husband going through his normal evening routine. At midnight, I was still awake when she finally came to bed. She slid under the covers without a word, but I could feel the tension radiating from her body like heat from a furnace. "Vivian, I love you." She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep, then in a voice barely above a whisper, "I love you too." It was the last lie she'd tell me for a while. Friday morning brought the first snow of the season and a phone call that changed everything. I was reviewing Technova's environmental impact requirements when my secretary buzzed through. "Mr. Harlow, there's an Andrew Fraser here to see you. He says it's urgent." I smiled at my coffee cup. "Send him in." Andrew Fraser walked into my office like a man approaching the gallows. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by the nervous energy of someone who'd finally realized he was in over his head. He sat across from my desk, fidgeting with his expensive watch. "Mr. Harlow, thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Please, call me Eli. We're practically family, right?" He flinched at the word family. "Right. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about our permit applications. I understand there might be some complications." I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. "Complications? I wouldn't call them complications, more like standard regulatory requirements, very thorough standard regulatory requirements. The environmental impact study alone will take 6 weeks. Could be 8, depending on what they find. You know how these old buildings can be. Asbestos, lead paint, God knows what else." Andrew's jaw tightened. "We've already signed a lease. We have contractors scheduled. This delay could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars." "I understand your frustration, but public safety has to come first. I'm sure you'd agree that we can't cut corners when it comes to protecting the citizens of Portland." "Of course not, and the historical preservation review is particularly important. The Arts District has such character, don't you think? We wouldn't want some modern eyesore disrupting the neighborhood's charm." He was sweating now, despite the October chill outside. "Is there any way to expedite the process? We're willing to pay additional fees." "I'm afraid not. These things take as long as they take." I opened his file and pretended to study it. "Although I do notice you haven't submitted your traffic impact analysis yet. That's going to add another few weeks once you do." "Traffic impact analysis? Required for any business expecting more than 200 daily visitors. With your expansion plans, I'd estimate you'll have at least 300 people coming and going every day. Employees, clients, delivery drivers. The city needs to understand how that'll affect local traffic patterns." Andrew looked like he might throw up. "How long will that take?" "Hard to say. Depends on how busy our traffic consultants are. Could be a month, could be 3. 3 months? Maybe more if they find problems. You know how these traffic studies can be, one little bottleneck and suddenly you need to redesign your entire parking situation." He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked Congress Street. "This is insane. We've been planning this expansion for a year." "Planning is important, but so is following proper procedures. I'm sure a successful businessman like yourself understands the importance of doing things the right way. He turned back to me, and for a moment I saw something dangerous in his eyes. What do you want? I'm sorry. Cut the BS. What do you want? Money? A consulting contract? Just name your price. I stood up slowly, letting my full height and authority fill the room. Mr. Fraser, I think you should leave now, before you say something that gets you in even more trouble. Is that a threat? It's advice. From someone who's been in city government long enough to know that attempted bribery of a public official is a felony. The color drained from his face. He'd just realized that his affair with my wife wasn't his only problem anymore. I didn't mean, I think you did, but I'm willing to pretend this conversation never happened, as long as you understand that Technova's permits will be processed according to standard procedures, with all required reviews and inspections. He nodded mutely. Good. Have a nice day, Mr. Fraser. Give my regards to Vivian. After he left, I called Benny into my office. How'd you like to do some field work today? What kind of field work? The kind where you follow someone and document their activities. Mr. Fraser just left here in quite a state. I'd like to know where he goes and who he talks to. Benny grinned. This is getting interesting. It's about to get a lot more interesting. That afternoon, while Benny tailed Andrew around Portland, I paid a visit to Technova's offices. The company occupied 2 floors of a sleek building in the old port, all glass and steel and expensive furniture. The receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings, looked up as I approached. Can I help you? Elliot Harlow, City Licensing Commission. I'm here to conduct a preliminary inspection. Her eyes widened. Should I call someone? That won't be necessary. This is just a routine visit. Of course, there was nothing routine about it. I spent 2 hours going through Technova's offices with a fine-tooth comb, taking photos and making notes. The corporate cafeteria that needed a restaurant license, I found 3 health code violations in 5 minutes. The on-site gym that required special permits, the emergency exits weren't properly marked. But the real prize was Vivian's office. She was in a meeting when I arrived, visible through the glass walls that made Technova's management suite look like a fishbowl. I watched her present to a room full of executives, animated and confident, completely unaware that her husband was standing 20 feet away documenting every potential code violation in her workplace. Monica Chen spotted me first. She was sitting in Vivian's office, waiting for the meeting to end, when she glanced up and saw me in the hallway. "Oh my God," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear through the glass. I waved. She fumbled for her phone, probably texting Vivian that her boring husband had somehow materialized at Technova like a ghost. Through the conference room window, I saw Vivian check her phone and go pale. The meeting ended 5 minutes later. Vivian practically ran out of the conference room, her face a mask of forced calm. "Eli, what a surprise! What are you doing here?" "Routine inspection," I said, making a note on my clipboard. "Just checking to make sure everything's up to code. Is there a problem?" "Few minor issues, nothing that can't be fixed." I looked around her office, taking in the expensive artwork and the view of Casco Bay. "Nice setup you have here." "Thank you. Must be rewarding work. All those late nights, all that dedication. Andrew's lucky to have such a committed employee." Monica made a strangled sound from behind Vivian's desk. "I should get back to work," Vivian said quickly. "Of course. Don't let me keep you." I handed her my business card. "If anyone has questions about the inspection, they can call me directly." She stared at the card like it might bite her. "I'll be sure to pass that along." "Great. Oh, and Vivian, we should talk tonight about your future plans." I left her standing in the hallway, clutching my business card and looking like she'd seen her own obituary. By evening, Benny had a full report. Andrew had gone straight from our meeting to a lawyer's office, then to a bar where he'd consumed 4 whiskey doubles in 2 hours. He'd made 6 phone calls, sent dozens of texts, and generally behaved like a man whose world was falling apart. "He knows you know," Benny said. "Question is, what's he going to do about it? Probably something stupid. You want me to keep an eye on him? 24/7. And Benny, if he comes anywhere near my house or my wife, I want to know about it immediately." That night, Vivian came home 3 hours late, claiming she'd been dealing with work issues. She barely spoke during dinner, picking at her food and checking her phone constantly. "Everything okay at the office?" I asked. The inspection went well, I thought. A few small violations, but nothing major. She looked up sharply. "Violations? Health code stuff mostly. Improper food storage in the cafeteria, some issues with the gym equipment, standard violations for a company that's growing too fast. Will you have to shut anything down? Not if they fix the problems quickly. I'm sure Andrew will make it a priority. She nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She was calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage I could do. I'm going to bed early, she announced after barely touching her dinner. Good idea. You look tired. She paused at the bottom of the stairs. Eli? Yeah, are we okay? You and me? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. But there was something different in her eyes now. Something calculating and cold. We're fine, I lied. Why wouldn't we be? She didn't answer, just headed upstairs to what I now knew would be another night of secret phone calls and whispered conversations with her lover. But this time, I'd be listening. Saturday morning brought a text message that changed the game entirely. I was having coffee and reading the paper when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Eastern Waterfront Park at 10 a.m. Come alone. A. Andrew Fraser wanted a face-to-face meeting. After everything that had happened, he was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I was betting on stupid. Eastern Waterfront Park was nearly empty on a cold October morning. A few joggers braved the wind coming off Casco Bay, but most of Portland was still inside, nursing hangovers and sleeping off Friday night. I found Andrew sitting on a bench overlooking the water, his expensive coat pulled tight against the chill. You came, he said without looking at me. You asked nicely. I sat down beside him, maintaining a careful distance. What's on your mind, Andrew? I think you know. Humor me. He finally turned to face me, and I was surprised by what I saw. The cocky executive from Tuesday night's dinner was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his usually perfect hair disheveled. I know that you know about Vivian and me. Do I? Cut the crap, Eli. You've been playing games all week. The permits, the inspection, that little show you put on at her office, you know exactly what's been going on. I shrugged. I know my wife's been happier lately, more energetic. I assumed it was job satisfaction. It's not job satisfaction. No kidding. We sat in silence for a moment, watching a fishing boat navigate the harbor. Finally, Andrew spoke again. How long have you known? Does it matter? It matters to me. Since Tuesday night. Your phone call on the restaurant patio wasn't as private as you thought. He winced. Crap. Indeed. Look, I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you've been screwing my wife for 2 months while your company's permit sat on my desk waiting for approval. What I think is that you've been using her to get inside information about city regulations while planning some romantic getaway to the Bahamas. What I think is that both of you have been laughing about how stupid and boring I am while you plot my professional and personal destruction. Andrew's face went white. She told you about the Bahamas? She didn't have to. I read your text messages. You what? Amazing what people leave lying around on their phones these days. Very careless. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the waterfront railing. This is insane. You can't just spy on people. I can spy on my own wife all I want, especially when she's stupid enough to leave evidence lying around the house. You're violating her privacy. She violated our marriage vows. I think we're even. Andrew gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. What do you want? That's the second time you've asked me that question. The first time you offered me money. What's on the table now? I'll end it. The affair. I'll transfer Vivian to another department, minimize contact. We'll cancel the Bahamas trip. Generous, what else? What do you mean, what else? Andrew, you seem to think this is a negotiation. It's not. You screwed my wife and tried to manipulate city regulations for your business advantage. Those aren't mistakes you can just apologize away. Then what do you want? I stood up and walked over to where he was standing. Up close, I could smell the desperation on him. Stale whiskey and fear sweat. I want you to understand something. I'm not the boring, clueless husband you and Vivian have been laughing about. I'm the guy who holds your company's future in his hands. I'm the guy who can make your expansion plans disappear with a single phone call. I'm the guy who knows where all the bodies are buried in this city's bureaucracy. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought you were playing games with some harmless city drone who wouldn't fight back. But I'm not harmless, Andrew. I'm just careful. He backed away from me, genuine fear flickering in his eyes. What are you going to do? That depends on what you do next. I told you I'll end it with Vivian. Too late for that. The damage is done. Then what? I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Benny's photos. Andrew and Vivian kissing in the hotel parking lot, clear as a magazine cover. Nice picture, don't you think? Very artistic. The lighting, the composition. Benny's got a real eye for photography. Andrew's legs seemed to give out. He sat down hard on the bench, staring at the photo. You've been having us followed for days. Amazing what you can learn when you actually pay attention. This is blackmail. This is documentation. There's a difference. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Just sit back and watch what happens when someone who actually knows how to play the game decides to start playing. I put my phone away and started walking back toward the parking lot. Andrew called after me. Eli, wait! I turned back. She loves you, you know. Vivian, whatever's happened between us, she still loves you. No, she doesn't. She loves the idea of me, the steady paycheck, the nice house, the security I provide. But she doesn't love me. If she did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So what happens now? Now you go home and wait. And Andrew, don't do anything stupid. Don't try to warn her. Don't try to run. Don't try to fix this. Just wait. For what? For me to decide how much mercy you deserve. I left him sitting on the bench, staring out at the water like a man contemplating his own drowning. That afternoon, I got a call from Ruth at O'Malley's. You need to get down here, she said. Now. I found Monica Chen at the far end of the bar, 3 sheets to the wind and talking loud enough for half the pub to hear. She was regaling a table of strangers with the story of Vivian's affair, complete with details about hotel rooms and secret phones and that boring husband who doesn't have a clue. How long has she been here? I asked Ruth. 2 hours. She's been running her mouth the whole time. About what specifically? Everything, the affair, Andrew's business problems, how Vivian's planning to leave you for a rich tech executive. Oh, and something about how you're too stupid to connect the dots between your job and Andrew's permits. I ordered a beer and settled in to listen. Monica was drunk enough to be indiscreet, but sober enough to be coherent. It was a perfect combination for gathering intelligence. The best part, Monica was saying to her captive audience, is that Eli works for the city licensing department. He could totally screw over Andrew's company if he wanted to, but he's too clueless to realize it. Vivian says he just goes to work, stamps papers, and comes home to watch TV. One of her listeners, a guy in a Red Sox cap, looked skeptical. Sounds like the wife's playing with fire. That's what I told her. But she says Eli's completely wrapped around her finger. Says she could probably cheat on him in their own bed and he wouldn't notice. Ruth caught my eye and shook her head in disgust. Besides, Monica continued, it's not like it's going to last forever. Once Andrew gets his permits approved, they're planning to take a nice long vacation together. Maybe make some permanent changes to their living situations, if you know what I mean. What about the husband? Asked a woman at the table. What about him? Vivian says he'll probably be relieved. No more pretending to be interested in her career. No more boring dinner conversations about city regulations. He can go back to his little government job and his little government pension and find some other boring woman to ignore. I finished my beer and left a 20 on the bar. Ruth nodded toward Monica. Want me to cut her off? No, let her keep talking. Just make sure someone's recording it. Already am, Ruth said, tapping her phone. Figured you might want a copy. That evening, Vivian came home with flowers and a bottle of expensive wine. What's the occasion? I asked. Do I need an occasion to treat my husband? Usually. She laughed, but it sounded forced. I thought we could have a nice dinner together. Just the 2 of us. We haven't done that in a while. No, we haven't. She busied herself in the kitchen, preparing what used to be my favorite meal. I watched her move around our kitchen with practiced efficiency, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. She'd been different then. Warmer. More genuine. Less calculating. Eli, yeah? Are you happy, with us? With our life? It was a loaded question, and we both knew it. Are you? I asked first. I considered lying, keeping up the pretense for a few more days. But I was tired of pretending. No, Vivian, I'm not happy. Haven't been for a long time. She stopped stirring the sauce. Why not? You really want to know? Yes. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a convenience. Because you've been treating our marriage like a business arrangement that you can modify whenever it suits you. Because you've been lying to me for months, and you're still lying to me now. She turned to face me, her face pale but determined. What do you mean? I mean, I know about Andrew. The wooden spoon fell from her hand, clattering on the kitchen floor. I know about the hotel rooms and the secret phone and the plans for the Bahamas. I know about the text messages and the lunch dates and the way you two have been laughing about your boring, clueless husband. She opened her mouth, probably to deny everything, but I held up my hand. Don't, just don't. We're past the point where lies are going to help anyone. How long have you known? Does it matter? It matters to me. Since Tuesday night. She leaned against the kitchen counter like she needed the support to stay upright. What are you going to do? That's the question everyone keeps asking me. Andrew asked me the same thing this morning. You talked to Andrew? He wanted to negotiate, offered to end the affair, transfer you to another department, cancel your romantic getaway. Very generous of him. And I told him it was too late for negotiations. We stared at each other across the kitchen. 7 years of marriage, reduced to this moment of brutal honesty. Do you love him? I asked. I don't know. Do you love me? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know that either. Well, at least you're being honest now. What happens next? Next, you pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay, tonight. Eli, please, we can work this out. No, we can't. You made sure of that when you decided to screw your boss while he was trying to manipulate city permits through your husband. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. She started to cry, real tears. Not the crocodile tears she used when she wanted something. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. What about forgiveness? What about our vows? What about them? You broke them first. She packed a bag while I sat in the living room, listening to her move around upstairs. When she came down with her suitcase, she looked like a stranger. Where will you go? Monica's, I guess. Good choice. You two can compare notes on what a boring, clueless husband I am. She flinched. You heard about that? I hear about everything, Vivian. That's what boring city workers do. We pay attention. She paused at the front door. Is there any chance? No. You don't even know what I was going to ask. I don't need to. The answer is no. After she left, I sat in our empty house and tried to feel something other than relief. But relief was all I had left. The real war was just beginning. Monday morning brought 2 pieces of news that changed everything. The first came from Benny, who called me at 7 a.m. with an update on Andrew's weekend activities. Your boy's been busy, Benny said. Spent all day Saturday at his lawyer's office, then Sunday meeting with some guy who looked like a private investigator. They had lunch at the Eastland Park, same hotel where he's been meeting your wife. Interesting choice of venue. Gets better. After lunch, the PI handed Andrew a manila envelope. Thick one. Andrew looked pretty happy about whatever was inside. Any idea what it was? Not yet, but I got photos of both guys. Want me to run background checks? Do it. And Benny, double our security protocols. I have a feeling Andrew's about to do something stupid. The second piece of news came from my secretary at 8:30 a.m. Mr. Harlow, there's a gentleman here from the State Ethics Commission. Says he needs to speak with you about a complaint. My blood went cold. The State Ethics Commission only got involved when someone alleged corruption or misuse of power by a government official. Andrew hadn't just hired a private investigator, he'd gone nuclear. The investigator was a thin, serious man named Robert Walsh, who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. He sat across from my desk with a recorder and a file folder, all business. Mr. Harlow, we've received a complaint alleging that you've been using your position to retaliate against a local business owner for personal reasons. Specifically, that you've been deliberately delaying permit approvals for Technova Solutions because of a personal dispute with the company's CEO. That's an interesting theory. What evidence supports this allegation? Walsh opened his folder and pulled out a stack of documents. According to the complaint, Technova's permits have been subjected to unusual scrutiny and additional requirements not typically imposed on similar applications. The complainant alleges this is because of your personal animosity toward Mr. Fraser. Mr. Fraser and I barely know each other. The complaint suggests otherwise. It alleges that you've been having Mr. Fraser followed by private investigators, that you conducted an unauthorized inspection of his business premises, and that you've made threatening statements about your power to damage his company. I leaned back in my chair, impressed despite myself. Andrew had done his homework. These are serious allegations, Mr. Walsh? I assume you have evidence to support them? We have sworn statements from multiple witnesses, photographs of the alleged surveillance, and documentation of the permit delays. May I see this documentation? Walsh slid a folder across my desk. Inside were copies of Technova's permit applications, annotated with my requirements for additional studies and inspections. On paper, it looked incriminating, a clear pattern of escalating demands that went far beyond normal procedures. This is very thorough, I admitted. Fraser's lawyer did excellent work. So you don't deny the allegations? I don't deny that I've required Technova to comply with all applicable regulations. That's my job. But you do deny that these requirements are retaliatory. I smiled. Mr. Walsh, let me ask you something. How familiar are you with the city's building codes? Not very. What about environmental regulations, historical preservation requirements, traffic impact studies? I'm not an expert in those areas. Neither is Mr. Fraser, apparently. Because if he was, he'd know that every single requirement I've imposed on his company is not only legal, but mandatory for a project of this scope. I pulled out a different folder, one I'd prepared over the weekend. This contains documentation of similar projects approved by this office over the past 5 years. As you'll see, every single one was subject to the same requirements I've imposed on Technova. Environmental studies, traffic analyses, historical reviews, all standard procedure for major commercial developments in protected districts. Walsh frowned, flipping through my documentation. Furthermore, I continued, you'll find that Technova's timeline is actually faster than average. Most projects of this complexity take 6 to 8 months for full approval. Mr. Fraser is looking at 4 months, assuming he submits all required documentation in a timely manner. But the complaint alleges that I'm treating Technova unfairly. The evidence suggests I'm treating them exactly like everyone else, which apparently isn't what Mr. Fraser expected. I pulled out another folder. This contains documentation of my interactions with Mr. Fraser, including recordings of our meetings and copies of all official correspondence. You'll note that at no time did I threaten him or promise any treatment outside normal procedures. You'll also note that he attempted to bribe me during our second meeting, which I reported to my supervisor according to protocol. Walsh was looking increasingly uncomfortable. As for the surveillance allegation, I did hire a private investigator, but not to follow Mr. Fraser. I hired him to document my wife's extramarital affair with Mr. Fraser, which has been ongoing for several months. I slid one final folder across the desk. This contains photographs and other evidence of their relationship, including hotel receipts charged to Technova's corporate account and text messages discussing their plans to leave Portland together once Mr. Fraser's permits are approved. Walsh stared at the evidence like it might bite him. So you see, Mr. Walsh, while I may have personal reasons to dislike Mr. Fraser, I haven't allowed those feelings to influence my professional duties. I've treated his company exactly like every other applicant, following all procedures and regulations to the letter. The fact that this is inconvenient for his business timeline is unfortunate, but not unethical. This is not what I expected to find. I imagine not. Mr. Fraser seems to have confused standard procedures with personal vendetta. It's an understandable mistake for someone who's used to getting special treatment. Walsh packed up his files, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been played. I'll need to review all this documentation, of course. Of course, take all the time you need. I'm confident you'll find that everything has been handled appropriately. After Walsh left, I called Benny into my office. Change of plans. I want round-the-clock surveillance on both Andrew and Vivian. If they so much as jaywalk, I want documentation. You think they'll try something else? I think they're desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I was right. That afternoon, Vivian called me at work, the first time we'd spoken since she moved out. Eli, we need to talk. I thought we covered everything Saturday night. Please, it's important. Fine, but not at the house. Meet me at O'Malley's at 6. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a glass of white wine she wasn't drinking. She looked terrible, exhausted, stressed, like she'd aged 5 years and 3 days. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. What do you want, Vivian? I want to apologize, really apologize, not just say the words, okay? What happened with Andrew? It wasn't supposed to be like this. It started as just a flirtation, something to make me feel attractive. and interesting again. I never meant for it to go as far as it did, but it did go that far. Yes, and I'm sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught. She flinched. Both, I guess. At least you're honest. I know you probably can't forgive me, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you, and I never wanted Andrew to file that complaint with the Ethics Commission. But you knew he was going to. He told me yesterday, said it was the only way to protect his business. And you didn't try to stop him. I tried, but he wouldn't listen. He's convinced you're trying to destroy him. I am trying to destroy him. The difference is, I'm doing it legally. She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the Ethics Commission documentation. Andrew made a fundamental error. He assumed I was breaking the law to get revenge. But I'm not breaking any laws, Vivian. I'm just following them very, very carefully. I don't understand. Every requirement I've imposed on Technova is completely legitimate. Every delay, every additional study, every inspection, all of it is not only legal, but mandatory for a project of their scope. Andrew just expected special treatment because he's been screwing a city employee's wife. That's exactly what it is. He thought he had an inside track through you. When he realized I wasn't going to play along, he panicked and tried to frame me for corruption. But the ethics investigation will clear me completely and probably result in additional scrutiny for Technova. Funny how these things work out. Vivian stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. I never knew you could be so calculating. You never bothered to find out who I really was. You were too busy being bored by the man you thought I was. What happens now? Now you and Andrew deal with the consequences of your choices. What consequences? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You'll see. The next morning brought the coup de grace. I was in my office reviewing the final documentation for Technova's permits when my secretary buzzed through. Mr. Harlow, there's a reporter here from the Portland Press-Herald. Says she wants to ask about the ethics investigation. Perfect timing. Sarah Mitchell was an investigative reporter who'd been covering city politics for 15 years. She had a reputation for thorough research and a nose for corruption that had ended several political careers. Ms. Mitchell, what can I do for you? I'm following up on the ethics complaint filed against you. Care to comment? Happy to. The complaint alleges that I've been retaliating against a local business owner for personal reasons. I've provided the Ethics Commission with complete documentation proving that every action I've taken has been not only legal, but required by city regulations. Required how? I walked her through the same documentation I'd shown Walsh, explaining each requirement and showing her examples of identical treatment for other companies. So you're saying Technova isn't receiving any special treatment? That's correct. They're receiving exactly the same treatment as every other major development project in the city. But the complaint suggests you have personal animosity toward the company's CEO. I do. Mr. Fraser has been having an affair with my wife for several months, but my personal feelings haven't influenced my professional duties. Sarah's eyes lit up. This was a much better story than simple government corruption. Can you prove the affair? I handed her a folder containing some of Benny's photographs and selected text message screenshots. Holy crap, she whispered, flipping through the evidence. Indeed. So Fraser tried to frame you for corruption to cover up his affair with your wife? That's one interpretation. What's your interpretation? Mr. Fraser expected special treatment because of his relationship with my wife. When he realized that wasn't going to happen, he tried to remove me from the equation by filing a false ethics complaint. That's incredibly stupid. Yes, it is. The story ran the next day with the headline, "City official targeted by cheating wife's lover." It included details of the affair, the ethics complaint, and Andrew's attempt to bribe me. By noon, it had been picked up by 3 other newspapers and 2 local TV stations. Technova's stock price dropped 15% in one day. But the real masterstroke came that evening. I was having dinner at home, alone for the first time in years, when my phone rang. It was Ruth from O'Malley's. "Turn on Channel 6, she said. "You're gonna love this." The news story was devastating. Not only did it cover the affair and the ethics complaint, but it included interviews with several of Technova's employees who were concerned about the company's leadership and worried about the CEO's judgment. The reporter had also dug up Technova's financial records, revealing that the company was heavily leveraged and dependent on the Portland expansion to remain solvent. The permit delays, which had seemed like minor inconveniences a week ago, now looked like potential death sentences. But the coup de grace came at the end of the segment, an interview with Monica Chen, who was apparently trying to distance herself from the scandal. "I always thought Vivian was making a mistake," Monica said, looking directly into the camera. "Andrew Fraser is not a good man, and Technova is not a stable company. I've been looking for other opportunities." By Friday, 3 more Technova executives had resigned, and 2 major clients had terminated their contracts. The company's expansion plans were officially on hold, and rumors were circulating that they might not survive the next quarter. Andrew Fraser's business empire was collapsing, and he'd done it to himself. That evening, I got a call from Vivian. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked without preamble. "With what?" "You've destroyed Andrew's company. You've ruined his reputation. You've made both of us into laughingstocks." "I haven't done anything except my job." "Bees, you orchestrated this whole thing. I documented your affair and defended myself against false accusations. Everything else was just consequences." "Andrew's talking about leaving Portland, maybe leaving Maine entirely." "Good. He should have thought of that before he decided to screw my wife and try to frame me for corruption." "What about me?" "What about you? What am I supposed to do now?" "I don't know, Vivian. Figure it out. We were married for 7 years. Yes, we were. And you threw it away for a few months of excitement with a man who turned out to be a coward and a fool. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Now you get to live with it." She was quiet for a long moment. "I never knew you could be so cold. You never knew me at all." 2 weeks later, I got the final piece of news I'd been waiting for. Technova Solutions had filed for bankruptcy, and Andrew Fraser had left Maine for parts unknown. Vivian had moved to Boston, where she'd found a job with a marketing firm at half her previous salary. The ethics investigation had cleared me of all wrongdoing, and I'd received a commendation from the city manager for my thorough and professional handling of a difficult situation. I was sitting in O'Malley's, celebrating with Ruth and Benny, when Ruth asked the question I'd been expecting. "So what now? You gonna try to find someone new?" I thought about it, sipping my beer and watching the snow fall outside. Maybe eventually, but not yet. Why not? Because I'm enjoying being myself again. For the first time in years, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. And who are you, really? I smiled, raising my glass in a toast. I'm the guy who holds all the cards. I'm the guy who knows where the bodies are buried. I'm the guy you don't want to cross. And I'm the guy who just proved that boring city workers can be the most dangerous people of all. Benny laughed, clinking his glass against mine. To boring city workers. To boring city workers who aren't boring at all. Outside, the snow continued to fall on Portland, covering the city in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. I had a new life to build, a new future to create, and for the first time in years, I was looking forward to whatever came next. Andrew Fraser had learned the hard way that you don't mess with a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Vivian had learned that the boring husband she'd taken for granted was anything but boring when he decided to fight back. And I had learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting even, legally and completely.